Last week, Prime Minister Mark Carney ordered a comprehensive review of Canada's contract to purchase 88 F-35 fighter jets. That decision came days after Switzerland, a nation famous for precision and fiscal discipline, issued warnings about spiraling F-35 operating costs and sovereignty restrictions they never anticipated. Meanwhile, NATO planners are circulating classified evaluations showing the Saab Gripen E, quietly re-engineered by Rolls-Royce, now matches or exceeds F-35 capabilities in multiple combat scenarios. $19 billion. That's what Canada committed to the F-35 program. 88 aircraft, decades of operational dependency, complete integration into American defense architecture, and Trump assumed that decision was permanent. While Trump threatened Canada with annexation and tariffs, Rolls-Royce rewired the Gripen's propulsion core. While Washington demanded F-35 loyalty from allies, British engineers cut heat signatures and extended operational range. While NATO assumed the F-35 was the only fifth-generation option, the Gripen E transformed into a system that challenges every assumption about air superiority. The shock is complete. Canada's F-35 decision is no longer certain. Switzerland's warning exposed vulnerabilities Washington never wanted discussed. And Rolls-Royce Engineering just handed NATO a credible alternative that operates without American gatekeeping. Today we are showing you exactly how Rolls-Royce re-engineered the Gripen, how thermal signature reductions make it harder to track than the F-35 in specific profiles, how improved power curves deliver better performance in Arctic conditions, how electronic warfare integration operates independently of Pentagon servers, how Switzerland's cost warnings forced Canada to reassess everything, and how this engineering upgrade eliminates America's monopoly on advanced air power within NATO. But before we dive in, if you appreciate analysis like this, hit that like button and subscribe to stay informed on stories that matter. January 2026. Carney government orders review of F-35 contract. Not cancellation, not confirmation, review. That single word sent shockwaves through Lockheed Martin headquarters and Pentagon planning offices. The timing reveals everything. Switzerland issued F-35 warnings throughout 2024. Operating costs exceeded projections by 20 to 30%. Sovereignty restrictions tighter than anticipated. Swiss defense officials stated publicly they were renting technology, not owning it. That phrase spread through European defense ministries like wildfire. Canada watched. Canada learned. Canada started asking questions Washington did not want answered. For years, the F-35 narrative was absolute. Stealth dominance, network superiority, technological supremacy. No credible alternatives existed. Nations either bought F-35s or accepted inferior air power. That binary choice controlled NATO procurement for 2 decades. Then Rolls-Royce engineers got involved with the Gripen E program, not as publicized partners, not with dramatic announcements, quietly, methodically, systematically re-engineering critical propulsion subsystems while the alliance's attention stayed focused elsewhere. What they delivered shocked NATO technical evaluations, thermal signature reductions approaching stealth levels in specific flight regimes, power delivery optimized for low-altitude acceleration and high-altitude fuel efficiency, electronic control algorithms that integrated seamlessly with Swedish electronic warfare architecture, maintenance requirements simplified for one crew field serviceability. The Gripen E was already designed for dispersed operations. Sweden built it to launch from highways, operate from austere bases, survive in Arctic conditions, and maintain high sortie rates with minimal support infrastructure. Rolls-Royce upgrades amplified every advantage. Suddenly, NATO air forces had an alternative, not theoretical, not on paper, operational, flying, tested, and increasingly compelling for nations questioning F-35 costs and American control. Canada's Arctic geography became the critical lens. The F-35 requires climate-controlled hangars, complex diagnostic systems, continuous logistical chains, and connectivity to American servers for mission data updates. Reports from Alaskan F-35 bases show combat readiness drops significantly in extreme cold. Sensor issues, cooling system problems, maintenance complications. The Gripen E operates in nearly identical Swedish Arctic conditions routinely, takes off from frozen roads, maintained by compact technical teams, survives temperature extremes without specialized infrastructure. Decades of Baltic Sea patrols and Scandinavian Arctic operations proved its capability. For Canada, Defending the world's longest coastline across subarctic distances with limited infrastructure, the comparison became impossible to ignore. Switzerland's cost warning added urgency. If a neutral country with rock-solid finances worries about losing budget control, what happens to Canada? Carney's review followed logically, not abandoning the F-35, reassessing assumptions, exploring alternatives, demanding clarity on costs, sovereignty, and operational suitability for Canadian conditions. Pentagon reaction was immediate and anxious. American officials sought clarification on review scope. Defense lobbyists intensified pressure in Ottawa. Lockheed Martin representatives emphasized partnership benefits, all signals of concern that Canada might actually choose differently, because Canada is not just another customer. Canada is NATO's northern anchor, NORAD partner, historic ally. If Canada pivots from F-35 to Gripen, the entire narrative about American fighter dominance cracks. Poland, Norway, Netherlands, even Australia might start asking the same questions. That is why Rolls-Royce Reengineering matters so much. It did not just improve an aircraft, it eliminated the monopoly argument, gave allies a credible alternative, created negotiating leverage where none existed before. And NATO planners never saw it coming because they assumed British engineering would remain subordinate to American programs. They assumed the Gripen would stay categorized as a lightweight regional fighter. They assumed no single upgrade could challenge F-35 technological supremacy. All assumptions wrong. Rolls-Royce proved European engineering could deliver fifth-generation capabilities without American gatekeeping, proved affordability and performance were not mutually exclusive, proved NATO nations had choices. The Gripen E program began years ago as Sweden's next-generation fighter. Saab designed it around a proven concept: data-centric warfare, rapid response, high sortie rates, dispersed operations, minimal logistical footprint. All characteristics suited for Sweden's unique defense requirements. The engine at the heart of the Gripen E is the GE F414, American design, proven power plant used in the FA-18 Super Hornet, reliable, efficient, capable, but not optimized for Sweden's specific operational environment or the Gripen's advanced electronic warfare demands. That is where Rolls-Royce entered, not as a junior partner. As co-producer with a mandate to optimize, modernize, and re-engineer critical subsystems specifically for Swedish requirements. What began as manufacturing cooperation evolved into one of the most discrete performance transformations in modern military aviation. 4 major areas received Rolls-Royce focus, none announced with fanfare, none marketed aggressively, all quietly integrated and operationally validated. First, thermal signature reduction. Rolls-Royce engineers reworked exhaust flow management and internal cooling channels, stabilized heat output, reduced infrared visibility, made the Gripen E significantly harder to track using infrared search and track systems. Russia's S-400, Pantsir S-1, IRST platforms on Su-35s all rely heavily on thermal signatures. Masking those signatures delivers survivability advantages analysts describe as intelligent stealth. Not airframe shaping, not radar-absorbing coatings, pure engineering, the thermal management through propulsion optimization. The result is a fighter that presents a smaller heat signature than adversaries expect, complicating targeting solutions and increasing survival rates. Second, power curve optimization. Instead of chasing maximum thrust headlines, Rolls-Royce optimized where combat pilots actually need power. Low-altitude acceleration improved, high-altitude fuel efficiency increased. Power delivery during aggressive maneuvers became more responsive and predictable. Pilots described the experience as smoother, faster to respond, easier to control under pressure. This reshaping of power output altered how the Gripen behaves during dogfights, missile evasion, sustained high G turns. The aircraft no longer feels constrained by its engine during dynamic engagements. That performance edge rewrites assumptions about the Gripen's combat effectiveness. Third, electronic control algorithms. Rolls-Royce updated the FADEC system, the digital brain governing engine behavior. These changes improve timing, throttle responsiveness, and coordination between engine and onboard systems. More importantly, the updates enhanced how the engine interacts with the Gripen E's sensor fusion and electronic warfare architecture. The Gallium electronic warfare suite can now operate at full power without degrading engine performance or forcing compromises elsewhere. Previously, power allocation limits created trade-offs between propulsion and electronic dominance. That ceiling disappeared. the aircraft gained the ability to push sensors, jammers, and defensive systems to their limits while maintaining stable and efficient engine output. Fourth, reliability under extreme conditions. The Gripen E was already designed for dispersed operations from icy roads and austere bases. Rolls-Royce pushed those capabilities further. Engine tolerance for foreign object ingestion increased. Resilience to rapid temperature shifts improved. Maintenance requirements were simplified for field-level crews. One crew's serviceability became the design emphasis. Faster turnaround times. Downtime dropped by as much as 40% compared to older configurations. For air forces measuring combat power in available aircraft rather than brochure specifications, this change matters profoundly. NATO fighter wings reviewing the data were caught off guard. The Gripen was never expected to compete directly with the F-35, yet in several mission profiles, it now began to outperform quietly and consistently. Electronic warfare effectiveness approaching F-35 levels, supercruise-like performance in specific flight profiles, improved survivability against advanced air defense systems. Significantly lower cost per flight hour than any Western competitor. That performance shift triggered geopolitical ripples. European air forces realized they could field high-end fighters with reduced dependence on the United States. Procurement discussions began changing tone. Countries like Canada, Finland, Czech Republic, even Hungary started revisiting earlier decisions and reassessing long-term needs. Rolls-Royce never intended to disrupt NATO procurement. They simply executed Sweden's requirements with precision. But by delivering capabilities that matched or exceeded American systems in critical areas, they accidentally eliminated Washington's monopoly leverage. Numbers tell the story Washington does not want discussed. Switzerland selected the F-35 in 2021 after rigorous evaluation. Purchase price appeared acceptable. Operating cost projections seemed manageable. Technological superiority looked decisive. The decision was framed as final validation of the program. That confidence evaporated quickly. By 2023 and 2024, revised cost assessments emerged. Operating expenses exceeded earlier projections. Inflation hit harder than expected. Pricing adjustment mechanisms revealed themselves as unilateral. Every time the Pentagon raised maintenance costs, software upgrade fees, or adjusted part supply chains, countries that bought the F-35 had to accept it. No negotiating power. Swiss defense officials acknowledged something deeply uncomfortable. Full control over lifetime expenses was no longer guaranteed. For a country built on fiscal discipline, this represented a serious warning. The numbers crystallize the problem. F-35 cost per flight hour exceeds $35,000 according to independent estimates. Gripen E operates around $8,000 per flight hour. Over a 30-year operational life, that gap becomes tens of billions of dollars. Canada's 88 aircraft commitment translates to specific financial exposure. If each aircraft flies 250 hours annually, that is 22,000 flight hours per year. At $35,000 per hour, annual operating costs reach $770 million. Over 30 years, $23.1 billion just for flying the aircraft, not including procurement, infrastructure upgrades, training systems, weapons integration, or unplanned maintenance. Compare that to the Gripen E at $8,000 per flight hour. Same 22,000 annual hours costs $176 million, whereas over 30 years, $528 billion, a savings of nearly $18 billion in operating costs alone. Those numbers explain why Switzerland issued warnings, why Canada ordered a review, why NATO nations are quietly reassessing procurement decisions. But cost is only half the equation. Sovereignty became the other critical factor. The F-35 operates as a complex digital system where every mission, every sensor reading, every software update connects to systems managed by the United States. Data from each F-35 flight transmits to the Autonomic Logistics Information System, later the Odin system, both under Pentagon control. What does this mean? Every time Switzerland wants to update combat software, upgrade electronic warfare capabilities, or perform sensitive level maintenance, they need authorization from Washington. No exceptions. A Swiss defense official stated in a closed hearing, "We're renting the technology, not owning it." That phrase captured the exact pressure point. When you buy an F-35, you do not actually own full control of that aircraft. For Switzerland, this created existential questions. If U.S. political priorities shift, if Washington decides to restrict access to systems, what does a nation with F-35s do? For Canada, the sovereignty issue becomes exponentially more critical. Canada must defend vast Arctic territories where distances are extreme, infrastructure is limited, and weather is unforgiving. Absolute autonomy matters. Climate-controlled hangars, centralized logistics, and limited cold weather operational history raised doubts. Alternatives designed for dispersed operations and subarctic environments began looking increasingly relevant. The Gripen E was built from the ground up for exactly those conditions. Can take off from highways, gets maintained by compact teams, operates effectively in northern European climates nearly identical to Canada's subarctic regions. Sweden proved Gripen survivability through decades of Baltic Sea patrols and Scandinavian Arctic operations. Not theoretical, operational reality. Then there is the cybersecurity and data dependency issue. The F-35's diagnostic system relies on constant connection to centralized mission data systems and Odin servers located in the U.S. Every time the aircraft needs a status check, software verification, or combat update download, it phones home to Washington. This creates two major risks. First, in a geopolitical crisis, if the connection to U.S. servers gets disrupted, whether from cyber attack, political decision, or technical failure, Canada's entire F-35 fleet combat readiness takes a serious hit. Second, response time. When Arctic tensions escalate, and analysts predict this will happen within the next decade, Canada cannot wait for Pentagon approval cycles to update software or adjust combat parameters. Every second counts. According to multiple cybersecurity experts, a sovereign nation should not put its air defense capabilities into a system where they do not fully control the digital infrastructure. This is exactly what Switzerland warned about. Washington built F-35 dominance on a simple premise: no credible alternatives exist. That monopoly generated leverage across NATO. Buy American or accept inferior air power. The choice was binary. Control was absolute. Rolls-Royce Engineering just shattered that premise. The Gripen E now offers capabilities that match the F-35 in critical mission profiles while delivering operational advantages in dispersed, austere, and Arctic environments. For Trump's America, this represents catastrophic leverage loss. The F-35 program is the most expensive defense project in history, over $1.7 trillion committed across its lifetime, hundreds of billions in export sales projected, political and economic influence tied directly to allied procurement decisions. Canada choosing the Gripen would trigger a domino effect. If a core NATO member, a historic ally, publicly rejects the F-35 for a more independent system, other nations will follow. Poland, Norway, Netherlands, even Australia might start asking the same questions Switzerland raised. That is why diplomatic pressure from Washington on Ottawa never stops. International observers note Canada is the most critical domino in America's global F-35 strategy. If Canada walks away, the entire narrative about F-35 absolute dominance starts to shake. Trump cannot offer what the Gripen delivers, cannot provide the same operational flexibility, cannot guarantee the same fiscal predictability, cannot eliminate the sovereignty restrictions, cannot compete on Arctic suitability. The F-35 was designed for network-centric warfare from established bases with robust logistics. The Gripen was designed for rapid deployment, highway operations, minimal support, and maximum autonomy. Different philosophies, different operational concepts, different suitability for Canadian requirements. American defense officials recognize this vulnerability. Pentagon briefings emphasize partnership value, intelligence sharing, interoperability, alliance commitment, all valid points, all insufficient to address the fundamental issues Switzerland identified and Canada is now confronting. Cost control, climate suitability, cyber independence, technological sovereignty. These are the factors a truly sovereign nation must prioritize. The F-35 struggles on all four dimensions when evaluated against the Gripen E. Trump's reaction to a Canadian pivot would be predictable. Claims that Canada is undermining alliance cohesion, threats of retaliation, demands that Canada prioritize American systems, but leverage is gone. Cannot force Canada to accept higher costs, cannot guarantee Arctic performance, cannot eliminate sovereignty restrictions. Canada's F-35 decision was supposed to be locked in. Infrastructure investments planned, training systems ordered, long-term commitments made. Then Switzerland issued warnings. Rolls-Royce delivered upgrades, and suddenly the decision that seemed permanent became negotiable. Defense markets operate on momentum and assumptions. The F-35 enjoyed both. Rolls-Royce Engineering broke the momentum. Switzerland's transparency shattered the assumptions. Now, Canada has leverage where none existed before. The broader implications extend into alliance dynamics. NATO has operated on American technological superiority for decades. The F-35 symbolized that superiority, maintained dependence, ensured influence, a competitive alternative from European engineering challenges that structure fundamentally. Nations gain negotiating power. Procurement becomes a genuine choice rather than a foregone conclusion. American defense industry faces competition in a market segment it controlled absolutely. Trump's America First policies accelerated this shift. By weaponizing trade relationships, threatening allies, and creating unpredictability, Trump made European defense independence politically acceptable and strategically necessary. Rolls-Royce did not set out to undermine American influence. They executed a Swedish engineering mandate with British precision. But the geopolitical consequences are undeniable. NATO air forces now have options. American monopoly leverage evaporated. The transformation Rolls-Royce delivered is not software, not easily reversed policy, physical engineering, permanent infrastructure, operational validation. The Gripen E with Rolls-Royce upgrades represents a mature, combat-ready system. Sweden operates it. Brazil ordered it. Multiple evaluation programs validated its capabilities. NATO exercises demonstrated its interoperability. It is not a concept, it is reality. Infrastructure follows capability. Nations that choose the Gripen build maintenance facilities, train technical crews, integrate weapon systems, establish supply chains. Once built, these systems operate for decades, cannot be quickly pivoted to different aircraft, create path dependency. Canada reviewing the F-35 is not temporary hesitation. It is strategic reassessment driven by Switzerland's cost warnings and recognition that Arctic operations demand different capabilities than the F-35 was designed to deliver. Infrastructure delays signal this reassessment. According to public defense budget reports, several specialized hangar construction projects and maintenance systems have been under review instead of rolling out immediately as originally planned. If the decision was locked in, why delay infrastructure? Canada's Defense Department has expanded studies on actual Arctic operating conditions, including assessments of alternative systems. Analysts see this as unusual because settled procurement does not require additional research. The research suggests unsettled questions. Conversations between Ottawa and European manufacturers, especially Sweden's Saab, have increased significantly. Despite no official announcements, defense watchers note regular presence of Saab representatives at Canadian defense conferences. This engagement indicates serious consideration. What Canada is learning from Switzerland goes beyond aircraft comparison. 3 strategic lessons emerged. Ownership matters more than stealth on paper. Real-world readiness matters more than theoretical superiority. And technological independence cannot be sacrificed for political pressure. These principles define sovereign defense policy. Switzerland articulated them through transparency about F-35 challenges. Canada is absorbing them into procurement strategy. The Gripen's engineering advantages are permanent. Rolls-Royce delivered physical modifications to propulsion systems, changed thermal signatures, optimized power delivery, integrated electronic warfare architecture. These modifications cannot be undone by policy shifts or political pressure. The operational advantages are validated. Sweden operates the Gripen E in Arctic conditions, maintains high sortie rates with minimal infrastructure, demonstrates exactly the capabilities Canada needs for its geography, not projected, proven. The cost advantages are structural. Lower flight hour costs stem from simpler maintenance, less specialized infrastructure, reduced logistics footprint. These characteristics are inherent to the design. Cannot be matched by aircraft requiring climate-controlled hangars and continuous connectivity to American servers. The sovereignty advantages are foundational. Sweden designed the Gripen for independent operations. No reliance on foreign authorization for software updates. No data transmission to external servers for diagnostic validation. No restrictions on when or how the aircraft can be deployed. For Canada, this independence matters existentially. Arctic sovereignty demands operational autonomy. Cannot accept delays tied to foreign approval cycles, cannot risk combat readiness dependent on continuous server access, cannot compromise territorial defense on political relationships that might shift. Trump demonstrated why sovereignty matters. threatened Canada with annexation, suggested military control of resources, created environment of hostility and unpredictability, made reliance on American systems look like strategic vulnerability rather than partnership strength. Rolls-Royce Engineering gave Canada an alternative exactly when Trump made alternatives necessary. That timing is not coincidental. European defense independence gained momentum precisely because Trump's chaos made American reliability questionable. The shift is permanent because infrastructure, training, and operational concepts lock in decisions. Once Canada commits to either platform, that choice extends 30 to 40 years. The aircraft selected today will defend Canadian airspace until 2060 or beyond. Switzerland's warning ensures Canada will not make that decision based on political pressure or alliance rhetoric. We'll make it based on cost control, operational suitability, cyber independence, and technological sovereignty. The F-35 may still win. Lockheed Martin will offer concessions. Washington will emphasize partnership value. American officials will promise support, but monopoly leverage is gone. Canada has options. Switzerland exposed vulnerabilities. Rolls-Royce delivered credible alternatives. That is why NATO was caught off guard. Alliance planners assumed F-35 procurement was settled, assumed no single engineering upgrade could challenge American dominance, assumed allies would accept higher costs and sovereignty restrictions because no alternatives existed. Rolls-Royce proved them wrong, quietly, methodically, permanently. The Gripen E now stands as a fifth-generation capable fighter that operates independently of American gatekeeping. Costs less, performs better in Arctic conditions, maintains sovereignty, and forces NATO to confront uncomfortable questions about procurement, control, and long-term autonomy. Canada's review continues. The decision has not been made, but the fact that the decision is now genuinely open, with credible alternatives seriously considered, represents a seismic shift in global defense markets. Trump's pressure backfired, Washington's monopoly collapsed, Rolls-Royce Engineering changed the game, and NATO will never see air power procurement the same way again. Switzerland issued a warning. Rolls-Royce delivered an alternative. Canada started asking questions. And suddenly the F-35's dominance is no longer absolute. This is not just about fighter jets. It is about control, sovereignty, and what happens when engineering excellence creates options where monopoly once existed. The F-35 program will survive, but its leverage is gone. Allies now have choices, real choices, backed by operational validation, cost transparency, and Swiss precision in exposing what Washington never wanted discussed. Rolls-Royce rewired the Gripen, NATO got caught off guard, and Canada's decision will reshape alliance air power for generations.